So everybody here is on 78-unit track, right? No 90, no 51. Cool. Who's in practicum right now? Awesome. These are the people that you're going to be like, oh, you're experts. Who's in practicum next fall, September 2015? That's the plan. And anybody the following year, September 2016. Awesome. Good planning. Okay, so did everyone get a chance to get handouts back as well? Good, good. So I'm Jean Riney-Niewiadomski. I am the practicum director here as well as I'm a lecturer, so I know I've had many of you in my 317 therapeutic interventions with children class, and I'm going to have more of you coming up, which is very exciting. Welcome to Practicum, and I would strongly encourage you, especially those of you that are in Practicum right now, because in my last session, folks had lots to add that was really helpful for everybody else in the room, and as they were clarifying for themselves, it was really a total of over $15 for everything she contributed to this session, so please do so. Feel free to ask questions, feel free to chime in, feel free to say, I don't quite understand what you just said, could you please explain that? Okay? All right, so you're on the 78-unit practicum track, and basically, just to start kind of from the very first step, practicum. Practicum is your chance to take everything that you've learned in all of your classes and all the theory and to get out and apply it, and to actually be placed at an agency where you get to work with children, adults, whatever that looks like for you. And it's your chance to start practicing as a clinician, as a therapist, under a lot of guidance, support, and supervision to help you be successful. I believe it's the most awesome part of the program. I think it's also the most challenging part of the program. I think all the reflection you're doing right now about who you are and how you are and what are your strengths and what are areas that you want to develop will really pay off when you're in practicum. So with that, just to go over some of the brief basics about practicum, on the 78-unit track, as you probably learned, our last session was a much bigger session. We have a lot of 90-unit students in the program, and we have 51-unit students in the program. So we have 3 different tracks right now. And the tricky thing is that you can't necessarily walk out to the halls of Loyola and ask somebody a question about practicum because there's 3 different answers. And if it's not the answer for you, it could be the wrong answer. And if you're on the MFT track or the MFT LPCC track, it could be the wrong answer. Who in here is on MFT alone track? Who's on dual combined MFT LPCC? And anybody LPCC alone? No. Okay. So just to start out with a little bit of clarity, I'm sure you know this if you're on that MFT LPCC track, but I'll say it anyway, is that you don't get to count any hours towards your license while you're pre-master in the program. So that's one of the bummer parts of that track. The MFT track, you get to count hours up to 1,300 hours until you get your master's. And then post-master's, you still have a remaining 1,700 hours that you get to get as an intern. So let's just go right there. So on the 78-unit track, in order to be eligible for practicum, you didn't know about the LPCC? Yes. You still can count, you can double count your hours, like you have to do practicum for LPCC, but your practicum doesn't get to count towards your license. But the hours you're doing for practicum, of course, can count for your MFT and can count towards your MFT license. Does that make sense? You can, there are 2 separate logs, but you can say, I just did this session. It definitely counts for the MFT. I'm going to count it over here. And that same session also counts towards my LPCC direct service, and I'm going to count it over there too. But the MFT counts towards your license. The LPCC does not count towards your license. It just counts towards you fulfilling your practicum. So the MFT is kind of a double bonus. You get to fulfill practicum and you get hours towards license. Okay, we good? Great. Yeah, Sharon? 13. Mm-hmm. Pre-master, 1,300 hours, or the maximum number of hours that the State of California Board of Behavioral Science allows you to count. So there are a set of classes that you have to take in order to be eligible for Practicum. And if you grab one of these handy-dandy sheets called What is Practicum, it says them right on there, it lists them out. They're in the back corner, so you can get it on your way out too, or now, whatever works for you. And those are the classes that you have to have completed in order to be eligible for Practicum. Once you have those classes completed, then you would be thinking, okay, I'm ready to start Practicum the following year. Practicum starts in September in the fall, and we start doing prep for that a year before in January. So for those of you that are in Practicum right now, you actually went to the fair last January, secured your site last spring, and potentially started your site in late summer or early fall. Is that correct? Brandon, when did you start your site? First week of August, okay. So those of you that are going, oh, I'm eligible for Practicum September 2015, means you'll be going to the Practicum Fair in January, which I'll give you that date a few slides down. And you will then start interviewing, negotiating, and securing offers between January and March, April. And in that negotiation, you'll negotiate your start date for your fall Practicum site. Mm-hmm. Of course. So the question is, can you still go to the fair? I would highly recommend everybody in this room go to the fair for different reasons. So if you're going to be starting Practicum in the fall, September 2015, you want to go to the fair because you want to secure your site. If you're in Practicum, you want to go to the fair because you want to start thinking about employment and you want to start kind of sizing up the market and seeing kind of where you are, what you're attracted to, what kind of organization or model of organization works best for you. And you might even be approaching a few agencies saying, I'm graduating, I'm interested in learning more about your agency for employment postmasters. Those of you that are going to be coming into Practicum a couple years out, you would want to go to the fair so you get an idea of kind of what is this fair. And it's big, and there's a lot of students there, and there's a lot of tables set up, and it can be a bit overwhelming because everybody kind of flocks to the table, and you might have to kind of get your way up to the front of the table to say, hi, I'm Jean, and I'm interested in your agency for my Practicum. And so then you get to kind of see kind of lay of the land. I have students asking all kinds of questions, and none of them are stupid, like, what do I wear to the fair? What should I bring to the fair? Like, just real basic things. You go, you observe, and you'll definitely feel like you're more prepared to what to expect when you're ready for Practicum. So you've got all your classes fulfilled, and you're ready to start Practicum. You've now gone to the fair, secured your site, and you're going to be starting in the fall. And so then there's this hours thing about how many hours you have to get. And I know this is complicated, and we'll talk about this lots of times. When you're in Practicum, the state of California requires that there's a certain amount of hours of direct experience, you providing therapy that you're going to get. And on the 78-unit track, it's very different than the 90-unit. So that's why you can't cross-consult with your peers about what their hours are. Yours are less. Lucky for you, you got grandfathered in. And so your hours are, for an MFT, 150 hours face-to-face clinical, so that's doing therapy, group, individual, 550 total hours out of the site. The 550 total hours, some of those hours might not be BBS hours, they're your total hours. Like I go to a site, I get there at 10 a.m., I sit at my desk, I answer calls, I organize my files, I do the bulletin board, I go to a staff meeting, then I go to supervision, and then I see clients. All that time counts towards your 550. So it's not really that overwhelming of a number. The number that tends to be a bit overwhelming, but it's doable, especially by the third quarter, is the 150 face-to-face, and that's your direct client face-to-face hours. Have you guys started doing that yet in Practicum yet? Have you started seeing clients face-to-face? And how are those hours coming along? Slowly but surely. Same for you. You're not worried about it. So first quarter is actually when you start Practicum, you've just been placed out at your site, August, September. You have to go to a ton of trainings, of course, because the agency wants to make sure you understand how they work, what their mission statement is and what their policies and practices are. And then you start getting matched up to see your clients. And typically the first quarter is your slowest quarter. Second quarter starts to pick up a little bit. Third quarter, you got your rhythm down and you're not concerned at all about the 150 face-to-face. Question in the last session was, do you have to have 50, 50, and 50? No. You can have 20 the first quarter, 75 the second quarter, and fulfill the remaining in the third quarter. It's fine. It's just by your third quarter, 10th class, when we go to enter your grade for practicum, you have to have all your hours completed by then. Because then that says that you fulfilled all the requirements that the state of California requires for the 70-unit practicum. Make sense? All right. Yes? What if you don't get your hours? We would be talking. If you were not going to get your hours, we would be having lots of conversations, and I would be working very close with you to make sure you do get your hours. We might even have a conversation with your site about getting you more clients, maybe start doing groups. Let's say you were having a lot of no-shows at your agency, and you're like, I had 20 scheduled clients last week, and 19 of them no-showed. Well, then we'd start saying, okay, let's figure out how you schedule 40 clients if you have a 50% show, no-show rate. Or you do groups. If you have 8 people in a group and 2 people don't show up, you still have 6 and you still can do group. So we get creative and we strategize, but we would be talking about that. If worst case scenario, you have some sort of life event that prevents you from fulfilling all the requirements, then we would talk about that too, and maybe you would ask for an incomplete until you got all your hours completed, and then we would change your grade from an incomplete to a pass. It's all local. You get done. Yeah. Yep. And the LPCC hours went up significantly for the 90 units. So don't talk to other LPCC 90 unit students in the program because it'll mess you up. So, okay, so we've got that. Yeah. Great question. Anybody in here on the 70-unit track, because you're the lucky ones that could do a pre-practicum without having to take extra classes. Anybody do pre-practicum here? Anyone else? Okay, so if you have pre-practicum hours, they don't get to count towards practicum, but they do get to count towards that 1,300 hours. So good for you, because you didn't have to take the class. The California regs changed that. Okay, so let's not look at that one for confusing. Pre-practicum, that doesn't apply to you either because we just talked about that. For the 70-unit track, for pre-practicum, you don't have to take a class. The rules now are anybody on the 90-unit track has to take a class. So BBS, has anyone checked out the BBS website? How does it feel to you? Okay, she says it's not that bad, I'm just saying it for taking purposes. Anyone else check out the BBS website? Yes, how does it feel to you? In which class? AG. Oh, a class towards, see there's different, on the BBS website, there's additional CEUs required, especially when you're licensed or getting licensed. And so great question here, or not question, but point to make. And goes back to the BBS website. Get familiar with the BBS website because when you graduate, the BBS will put additional regs, additional classes, and make changes that you as a licensed professional have to figure out what they are and then make sure you stay compliant. So let's just say the BBS decides all of a sudden they want everybody that's licensed. The next time you renew, once you're licensed, which is every 2 years, that you have to take an aging class, or you have to take a marriage and family class, or, which they do right now, you have to take a law and ethics class every single time you renew. The only way you know those regs and those changes is by getting familiar with the BBS website so you know as a licensed professional how to stay up to speed as the laws change, which they do. So, so you also as trainees, so there's 2 different types of definitions, and unfortunately, sites use them really flexibly, and it can be very confusing to you. Trainees are pre-mastered. Interns are post-mastered. And a lot of people will say, oh yeah, we have an intern program. And what they really mean is trainee practicum program. Even when you go to the fair, you'll have people that'll use that word intern with you. And my recommendation to you is to say, do you mean trainee? Because if they're looking for interns, they want mastered. If they're looking for trainees, they're talking about practicum. Does that make sense? Even on the BBS website, there's different handouts and different sets of information versus trainee versus intern. So, as a trainee, which all of you are when you're in practicum, would be the 1:5 ratio. Basically, a 1:5 ratio means 1 unit of supervision for every 5 hours of direct clinical experience. 1 unit, and this is where it gets a little tricky, 1 unit equals 1 hour of individual supervision with whomever's supervising you, your licensed person, or 2 hours of group equals 1 unit. So you have 1 unit of supervision, it can be individual or it can be group, and you get to claim 5 hours of direct experience. When you become an intern, postmasters, shifts 1 to 10. So you can actually get your hours quicker. So that's a real key time when you graduate and you're gonna really want your intern numbers as fast as possible. Yeah. The ratio for a trainee is 1:5. The ratio for an intern postmasters is 1 to 10. 1 unit of supervision for 10 hours of experience, 1 unit of supervision for 5 hours of direct experience. So less supervision, because basically they feel like you've mastered, you can draw down your hours. Yeah. Yes. No. How long can your hours be averaged? So basically, you have to get supervision as a trainee every week. And so, but your hours of experience, 5 hours to 1. So let's say you get, there's a 2 hour of experience that you need a full unit of supervision the following week. You can do that and still draw down the full time of experience that each week. Does that make sense? I know it's really complicated. See, let's just say you get 10 hours of direct service and you get 2 units of supervision in a week. Then the next week, you get 12 hours of direct service, but you only get 2 units of supervision. Well, you could potentially lose those hours, those other 2 hours, unless you get supervision. It allows you then the following week, as long as you get the right amount of supervision, to average it and still collect the supervision and still count the full hours. As long as it averages out. You still can't, once you do your math, if you don't have enough supervision for all the hours of experience that you're claiming, you can't claim all the hours. It gives you just a little bit more flexibility to average out. The BBS isn't real distinct about how much time, but from a good practice standard, I wouldn't go over several weeks from averaging it out. The real conversation is with the person that's signing off on your hours, what their comfort level is. So if they're comfortable with signing, they do all your forms on a monthly basis and it averages out each month, then that's, then they're going to sign off on all your direct experience and sign off that you have the right ratio for supervision to direct experience. Okay. So, and you're right, interns, it has to match up exactly in order to get your full hours. So our practicum fair is January 22nd from 4 to 6. Again, I recommend and invite everybody in the room to go. We will have 2 workshops before the fair, and you're all invited to these 2 workshops as well. One workshop will be resume writing. It's not a confirmed date because we're still securing the location, but the tentative date is January 8th. It's a Thursday, 4 to 5. And then the very following week, we have a interviewing workshop, which is January 15th, Thursday again, 4 to 5. So basically, we get you all set up in January, so you're really like on your game for the fair the following week. So there's like 3 Thursdays, bam, 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 and you're ready to go. What I heard from graduates last year, that they wish they would have come to the resume, even though they were in Practicum, they wish they would have come to the resume writing and the interview because they would have wanted that additional information to help them for their job search once they graduated in June. So we decided to open it up. If you've not done a resume before that is clinically focused, mental health focused, then come. Even if you're 2 years out, start getting comfortable with how you write a resume. If you are not familiar with how you would interview from a mental health field perspective versus maybe a for-profit type position or a technology-related position, it's really different. So come, start getting comfortable with that, start practicing. You're completely welcome to come to the resources we have available for you. The fair will be in the mission room in Benson, downstairs. And so did anybody go? Well, 2 of you went last year. Did anybody else go last year? Okay. So it's big. It's always downstairs in the mission room. It's always the set time. We have agreements with other universities about not having fairs at the exact same time because we're good sports about it all. And so a lot of agencies, they come to our fair and then they might go to another university fair as well. And so we try to be supportive of that. But it's that date. If you can't make it and you need a site, it makes your life a little bit tricky if you don't go to the fair, because that really is when the sites are going to start seriously considering you and know you're seriously considering them. Agencies tell me they prefer Santa Clara students. They tell me you guys are the most prepared. I hear that over and over again. As a clinician out in the world interviewing and hiring, I can attest to that as well. You guys are very well prepared. I know it doesn't feel that way. You probably feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You really are. I mean, even in my 317 class, I'm like, man, these people are so smart. They're going to be like such awesome clinicians. If I could hire you all now, I would. So that all translates, and it's all going to work for you well at the fair. But you definitely want to be prepared because it's competitive. You're competing with each other. You're competing with other schools. There's limited slots. Now, saying that, every student last year secured a placement. I'm not saying people didn't sweat it at the end, but every student did secure a placement. So do what you can to be prepared, and please come to the fair. Oh, so what if an agency that you want as your practicum experience is not on the list? So the list, and I brought the last 2 years back in the back. So that list is not just kind of a random willy-nilly list. There's a lot of work that goes into those agencies, making sure they're quality agencies, making sure they understand what we do, what you need in order to be trained as trainees. And so they've made commitments to fulfill that and to respond to the standards, and we have very high standards at Santa Clara. If I have agencies that want to be on the list, and they're not on the list. These are hand-picked agencies that get invited. It's not an open fair, it's an invitation only. And so you have an agency, you can come and talk to me about the agency. If the agency is in good standing, if the agency meets the criteria that the state of California puts out there, like they're a nonprofit, school setting, hospital setting, and the agency has a licensed person that can oversee your clinical work and meet our requirements, which are all highlighted in the supervised fieldwork agreement form, and the agency is willing to accept this as our agreement form and not have an additional contract with the university, then I will absolutely, the agency's in good standing and they meet those criteria to approve sites for an individual, and I have. Answer? All right. Any other questions right now? Okay. So, personal therapy. Basically, the minute that you enter into the program, you can start collecting personal therapy, and you have the bonus, which is a California reg, that you get to triple count it, and you can claim up to 100 personal therapy hours, which will give you 300 hours. Does not get to apply to Practicum, and it also is not anything that you turn into me ever. And the only time you'll ever report out that is with the BBS. There'll be a line when you apply for your licensing exam, and you'll enter in your actual personal therapy hours. It won't ask you to include backup information. They may, though, come back to you once you submit that application for a license. We'd like to see documentation of your personal therapy hours. And then you would want to provide documentation. My recommendation to you is having personal therapy not only makes you a better clinician and helps you in this program, but it's a great way to be able to draw down 300 hours of 3,000. And to keep your documents in order, I would make sure your therapist is a licensed person. I'd ask for a copy of their license. And then I just create a system for yourself where you track when you've gone to therapy, the date, and how long the session was, and just keep a log for yourself. Again, I'll never ask you for that, and it's unlikely the BBS would, but it's just smart organizing and planning for yourself.